to another episode of Three Pillars of Man.
Yes, sir. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. It's been a crazy start to 2025, at least for us. Just busy with work stuff, man. So we apologize for the delay in the episodes, but we are back on track and ready to get this shit rolling, man.
Yes, sir. It's been a crazy few weeks getting back on schedule, right? Yeah. So what are we focusing on today, man?
So today we are focusing on the story of a father and son relationship. Yeah. And before we do our normal deep dive, I would like to play the clip. And for people that are listening to this online, hopefully you can hear it. If not, we will do a little.
Yeah, we'll link it.
We'll link it. We'll do a little back brief on it, of course, after we listen to the video. So here we go.
You have to have extreme ownership. And so he would say stuff. Let's understand the son by the story of his father. The story of the father is embedded in the son. A desire to not end up like your father is a powerful source of extreme drive. That line comes from a Francis Ford Coppola biography. Francis Ford Coppola is talking about the relationship that he had with his dad. And I have two kids. I have a daughter and a son. And I could never imagine talking to my son the way that Francis Ford Coppola's dad did. Francis Ford Coppola's dad was a musician, but he was a failed musician. And what's going to happen if you have something you want to do in your life, and decade after decade, you say, I'm a talented musician. The world's saying, no, you're not. We're not interested in what you're offering, sir. Most people, I would consider the weaker people, become bitter. I'm not the problem. It's the world that's the problem. No, it's always you. You have to have extreme ownership. And so he would say stuff to his son, like Francis, when they were growing up, obviously not a lot of money. There can only be one genius in the family, and that's me. So it can't be you. And he would try to basically pull his son down. I want my son to do whatever he wants in life. Always understand the son by the story.
All right, so that's the clip. Brother Addison, what do you think about the clip and how does it resonate with you?
The idea behind it is not necessarily the fact that, it's the father and son. I think it also goes a level deeper in the idea of we put our own preconceived notions on other people, right?
Yeah, for sure.
What I feel like I could do is, well, let me back up. My granddad and my father never put really any limitations on me.
Right.
It was always whatever you set your mind to, you can do, right? Mm-hmm. Always set big goals, always kind of go for whatever you need in life.
Right.
And so I was lucky enough to have that, but I also understand the idea that not everybody gets that, right? Not everybody has that place of, your father having the understanding of that, right? It comes from a different place. Sometimes people get that their own limitations they put on other people.
Yeah.
Right. But when you're having those conversations with some folks, those conversations come out to be oh, you could never do that, right? And it's not the fact that they feel like you can't do it. It's the fact that they feel like they can't do
their own insecurities.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where I take that personally, because I don't really have the full example of the father aspect of him putting limitations on me, other than there's been few moments where I'm he has his own way of thinking about things.
Yeah, for sure.
And when I was gonna buy my first house, he was I don't know if that's a good idea. You're based on commission. Whatever.
Right.
And I'm but I'm already doing that.
Yeah.
With my apartment that I'm in.
Right.
I'm already doing these things. I'm already making a monthly payment. I already know how to function that.
Yeah.
And so those were some of those limitations that he kind of naturally wanted to put on me for whatever, and subconsciously, right?
Yeah.
Not necessarily knowing it.
Oh yeah.
And that was one of the best decisions I ever did.
Yeah.
I made a lot of money off that house.
Right.
Right. And financially and through that period of time, it was what I needed to do. Right. For where I was at in life. And I was able to provide, and I was able to do those things that I needed to do, not only for myself, but for those around me.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And it also taught me to be able to make sure that I've got money put away where I needed to put away and be able to financially afford the things that I'm purchasing.
right, right.
So those types of things where he was like, he said those little things.
Yeah,
But again, that could be across the board. Like, you have an employee or a subordinate
mhm.
that's like, man, I wanna be a millionaire by 35. Just because you didn't do it doesn't mean that they can't
They
do it.
can't do it, yeah.
Right? It's 100% accessible. Like, that is one thing that I've seen in life is I've seen some people get in the real estate business and not do well at all.
Right.
And then on the other end, they're 35 and a millionaire, right? Like, it's possible.
Yeah,
And so that's something that I try to take with me everywhere I go.
yeah. I mean, I have a similar, similar to what you and your dad relationship is similar to me and my dad. It's he never ever told like limited me to like what I can't and can't do.
Yeah.
We always had the joke of I would say, hey, I'm just trying to be like you, and he would say, no, I want you to be better.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a good dynamic to have. If you're a father, you have a son. You always want your whether it's your son or daughter, whatever. You always want your kids to be better because you think about how, like for example, my dad grew up in humble beginnings, and my grandma did all she can to support him, and with his dreams and what he wanted to do, and so naturally coming from that, he's gonna probably tell himself, once I have kids, I'm gonna put them in a better situation than what I had, and I think that's how it should be as the lineage continues to go
Yeah.
on, like
Continuously better.
right. So, when I get to that point where I have kids, I'm gonna have the same mindset. Like I want to put them in a position where they experience different things than I have or
Yeah.
even better. And but to your point also, there are some times where like you talk about something like it's a similar situation where, when I first bought my first townhome in Charlotte, we argue at least I would say like 4 hours.
Yeah.
And this was a couple days before closing. 4 hours on why I should get the townhome. I was on that side, of course, and he was like, "I don't know, we're, you need to just focus on saving as much money as you can, yada yada yada." And so we're going back and forth, and this was around the time where COVID was at its like peak, and
Yeah.
listings for homes were like
Moving.
like interest rates were at the 3%, and I'm sitting there like trying to strike gold, like
Yeah.
this probably will never happen again. This will never happen. Like that was
Yeah.
my mindset. This will never happen again. The opportunities now, like, and like I was confident in it because of the fact of like all the incentives that they were
Right.
given as a first home buyer and all that. And so I was like, the time is now. I don't see when the next time I'll strike gold on this. And,
Right.
we're back and forth and arguing. And then the funny thing was like after I closed on the house, we was walking through the townhome. He was like, "Yeah, this was a good buy."
Yeah.
And so, but even stuff like that, to your point, it's when I was younger, I used to take that personal and I would shut down. Like if he
Mhm.
said like, "Oh, you can't do that,"
Yeah.
or do you think that's smart? Like every time he questioned me on something I was about to do, I would just be like, you know what, maybe he's right. But I think now that I'm older, I still take, that.
You still take into consideration.
Yeah, I take it into consideration, but ultimately there's not a guilt if I go against his like thought or decision.
Right.
But I want to ask you, and of course we probably won't understand this until we're fathers, right? But what what makes you what do you think for people who think like that or try to project their insecurities on people, what makes you what do you think makes them do that? Like what's their like what's their overall, I don't want to say goal, but what's their overall reasoning behind why they try to put that on, like, put that on people?
One, I think it's because I've even found myself doing it and sometimes, right?
Mhm.
And whether and not necessarily in the idea of um like negatively,
Right.
in the idea of like someone's trying to achieve something and I don't understand, why they're not.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Right. It's not necessarily that. It's
Yeah.
more so it's like when I know that somebody can achieve something and then they don't see it, I like put myself in like why would you not do this? Like this makes 100% sense. Like you are 100% capable of doing this, right?
Right.
But I'm putting my own perspective because it works both ways.
For sure. For sure.
And I've said some things to some people where I'm like, you're being a dumbass. Like you need to do this, right? But that's my own perspective in trying to get past their limitations
Yeah.
of where they are, right?
Right.
And it's a betterment view, right? But I think it comes from both sides.
Yeah.
Right. Because on the other side of it, right, if you're trying to achieve something like buying the house, and your father goes like, hey man, I don't know if that's a good idea right now, da 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 da, for these reasons,
Right.
they're coming from their own experience and their own perspective.
That's actually a good point. That's a good point.
To back that up, the housing market crashed during our parents' lifetime.
For sure.
And what they got to experience from that, like my dad's a realtor, right? He knows that the market always comes back around, but he went through such a hard time that his perspective on it is like it could be a hard time for you. I don't want you to go through that.
because
And-
I went through it. Yeah.
And it doesn't come across that way, right? It's not explained that way. It's not.
Right.
It's like I don't know if that's a good idea for you, right?
Mhm.
I don't know if you should do that right now,
Mhm.
right? Those are the things that are said
Yeah.
when the subconscious is actually speaking from like a painful experience.
Yeah.
And I think that's where that comes from.
Yeah. I agree, and and I actually, like, to your point, I've had to like look within myself when I do that to people. Like, for example, when me and my fiance, um, this was early last year. We were just flirting with the idea of like, uh, talking about, live our living situation. How, do we want to do an apartment? Do we just want to go out and buy? Da da da. And so, we were talking about the subject of like, what goes into the process of looking at an apartment and like what type of apartment she wants and all that. And so she's saying, you know, I want like for apartment, right? She wants the high rise, the whole, the whole aesthetically pleasing and everything. And I immediately, I immediately shit canned it, to be honest. I was like, do you know how much that costs? Like those apartments don't even have enough room and da da da. And I don't think that's, and the what was funny was after I said all that, she just got real quiet and she started crying. And so I'm sitting there. My initial reaction was like, "What are you crying for?" Like, I didn't say nothing to hurt your feelings, or just kind of selfishly looking at it, right? But then, the more I thought about it, I was like, okay, maybe because the reason why I was saying all that was because of my previous experience of living in an apartment, and I know just what kind of goes into like you know rent and those types of apartments and what's the normal square footage and all that. And so um one thing I am good at, and I feel like I picked this up from my dad, is when there's a disagreement and I see things one way, and whether it's my fiance or my dad might see it another way, coming back the next day and being like, look, I know, how I said it or my delivery was off or could have been, very offensive, but this is what I was really trying to get at.
Yeah.
And then I explained like the whole, my experience, and I've ran into a situation where, that's a, I wanted that type of apartment, then I realized like, oh damn, you know, that's shit's too expensive.
Yeah.
So, and also I was doing that because I didn't want her to get discouraged when she started looking at those types of apartments, and then she started to realize like, oh, I can't afford this. So me trying to prevent her from preventing that happening to her, I just went ahead
And did it for her.
and shit canned it.
Yeah.
But I realized that's not the right, you know, that's not the right way to go about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's one of the things that as we as people we just have to be careful of, like, just because it didn't happen, you know, whether it happened to us or it didn't happen for us, like we can't go around and just, you know, shit on people's parade, you know,
Yeah.
because like you said, like you might have like an employee or you know, just someone younger than you say, oh yeah, I'm gonna be a millionaire by 32. You know, and I'm like, well, I'm 31. I'm not no fucking millionaire, so that's not gonna happen for you.
Right.
But you know,
Well, the idea, like you mentioned, we may not know what they were trying to do until we have kids or whatever, but it's a protective instinct.
yeah.
And that's what you did with V.
Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah.
Right? Like
Yeah.
it was a protective instinct of like, this is gonna end up happening, and I don't want it to happen then. I want to be able to handle this.
Let's deal with it. Let's deal. I'd rather deal with the disappointment now than later. Yeah.
And it's a protective instinct, and we're trying to, you know, as men growing into becoming leaders, becoming, you know, that aspect of manhood. It's a learning process. Like you're gaining the knowledge that you didn't necessarily have, and you're getting the perspective of, okay, I handled it this way, but now I understand that, you know, maybe I could have handled that a little bit differently. Maybe I could have asked more questions.
Right.
And it's a there's got to be some sort of a leniency with yourself of the understanding of like that level of communication doesn't come from just nowhere, right? It doesn't come out of nowhere. It takes time, and it takes experience, and it takes effort, and it takes self-awareness of learning how to handle those moments. Like I'm sitting here saying that, but I'm terrible sometimes.
Oh yeah, same.
Especially like
Same.
when like emotion or you know, the more personal side of things, like I cut it more business because that's what I understand and know. And so I take my personal experiences and I label them as a business experience sometimes.
Right.
And that's not always good. And it doesn't always, you have to understand there's nuance to those things, right?
Right.
And you've also got to, I think that's what I'm trying to say is it just comes from a place of, you know, you're trying to protect this person that you care about and love.
Yeah.
And sometimes that can come across as not that.
Yeah, I mean, you think about just the personalities of our dads. You know, they're very cut and dry, black and white.
Yeah.
So when they do have advice or recommendation, it can, it can sometimes come off as like damn, are you insulting my intelligence? Like, do you think I'm stupid or you know? But as I've gotten older, I've really tried not to pay attention to the delivery, but just more the message.
What's the message?
Right. And I think also, like, not only are like they're being protective, but you know, I'm just speaking for myself. Sometimes it can just be a shortcoming within yourself. Like she's more of, and I like to, I was actually explaining this like analogy to my mom. Like, you know, V is, if money wasn't an object, this is what I want. Yeah. I'm already more thinking like practical. That's just naturally how I am. She's more free, like free will, not free will, free spirited. You know, so she thinks like in the clouds. Yeah. Like if money wasn't an object, this is what I want, this is what I want, this is what I want. And when she was doing that, there was a little uneasiness about me because it's like, how can you think like that? Like that's not even realistic. But then like the more those type of situations were happening, because she's here. I'm more like, hey, this is what we can do.
Yeah.
And it's really me realizing like, why can't we do what she said, Or it's more of like us just meeting in the middle, right?
Mhm.
Like I like to be like, you know, hey, this is what we can afford, this is where I'm at. And then like as the process go on, it's like, okay, maybe I can add this in,
Yeah.
or maybe I can add this in or this in. And she's more coming from already like, hey, this is the dream here. And then she's more of like, okay, now I'm starting to see like I can't do that, I can't do that.
Yeah.
And then for me it's like, well, we can do that. And then we eventually meet in the middle. So I think that's the biggest thing too, is like before you shut somebody down, like I think you have to really understand like your insecurities, or like what's making you so uneasy about them dreaming like that, or
Yeah.
them saying that. I think that's yeah, that's one of the biggest things.
And I think there's a piece to that where I was listening to a podcast, and it seems to make more sense now that we're actually having a developing conversation with it. But
Yeah.
I was listening to a podcast this morning, and it was more so focused on perspective of things, right?
Yeah.
How how like where you focus is where you end up walking towards, right? Like,
Oh, that's good.
and then that's, as a human, you always have something to focus on, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're hungry and we're having this conversation, you may not be so focused on the conversation because your main
Right.
focus is
Stomach's going
the
crazy.
stomach.
Yeah.
But that's the same level of thought process as in a conversation, right? If we're sitting here having a conversation and I feel as if my focus, or if my focus is more so on a feeling of like you're coming at me,
Yeah.
then I'm more likely to be more guarded, right? And I'm gonna handle the situation how I would handle the situation versus if I ask myself, like, is this person just trying to love me? Right? Is this them trying to love me and have this conversation where they're turning down my idea, or
Yeah.
are they being malicious in that intent?
Yeah.
And that's something that I've always failed at. I never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
Because I've never had the self-awareness of that actual thought process.
Right.
Right? Because in the idea of like, let's say we're having a conversation, and it's more of like a personal conversation, and I feel I in personal conversations I tend to feel more attacked for whatever reason, right? Like you, I don't know, saying something along the lines of like, well, that's not possible because of this, and this, or um, have you thought about this, and this?
Right.
Or like, I'm not thinking about it as you're trying to coach me. I'm not thinking about it in the idea of like you're loving on me,
Right.
in the way
It's more like you're criticizing me.
you're criticizing.
Right. Right.
And because I'm this way, I'm like, nah, I'm gonna say, screw that.
Right. Right.
Like, I'm gonna do it because now you just put some energy into how you feel like you think that I can't do it, and you're doubting me.
Yeah.
And so I'm gonna do it.
Yeah, that's and the funny thing is that's not even a drive. That's more like venom.
Yeah,
it's like.
But that's been my entire career.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that's the only thought process. Like, doubt me
And see what
and
happens.
bet.
All right.
You know
I'll
what I mean?
make you a believer. Yeah.
Like it's a competition mindset, and I haven't necessarily noticed it, but now I can think back on like conversations and relationships, and my current relationship, and how there are moments where she's trying to love me, but I'm like, nah, I feel like I feel my competitive drive is heightened,
Right.
right? And I feel like you're trying to, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah. It's like we're like it's funny because like you saying that is just like I've done it the same way. It's like I don't really get moving until somebody says like, "Oh yeah, you can't do that shit," or yeah, that's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
And so now it's like, oh well, I'm gonna do it because of the fact that you said it was a bad idea, and I'm just want to prove you wrong.
Yeah.
But I think that's dangerous because it's like you're not even doing it because like you want to do it. You're just doing it because someone told you like you couldn't do it.
Yeah, I think that's double-ended though, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
it comes down to the fact of like I brought this up because I want to do it, or because I feel like this is the right position.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm bringing it up is to have perspective, right? The reason why you asked your dad about the house conversation, you brought the house conversation up,
Yeah.
was for the perspective that he was going to give.
Right.
And then he gives you that perspective, and you're like, nah, this is the time to do it.
Yeah.
Right? Because if I don't do it, right, that whole mentality is like, this is what you want to do.
Right.
You opened your mouth for what reason?
Right.
And then now that you got that perspective, you didn't like it, so now you're gonna double down.
Yeah.
Right? And that works in so many different aspects of life.
Yeah.
And yeah, what may do well in business, or what may be a form of drive in business, or something along those lines, doesn't necessarily work that well in personal life, or confrontation.
Yeah, 'cause you see a lot of people who thrive in business, but their personal relationships are trash.
Yeah, they take a hit.
Right, because it's like you're trying to apply principles and a certain ambition to your personal relationship, and it's like
I'm guilty of that, though.
yeah, same. I think it's hard, especially if you come from like if you grew up in athletics, or even just whatever, even if you just done just different types of things where like involve some type of competition, you just have this like I can't lose.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why I'm trying to get at. I think there is a good thing. There is a good part of like people doubting you and letting that drive you.
Yeah.
But I think you just have to. I do think while you're on that, while you're on that journey to get done what you need to get done, you have to you have to remind yourself like, why am I truly doing this? Am I doing this just because he told me I couldn't do it? I think that could be part of why you're doing it. I don't think that should be the sole reason why you're doing something.
No. Yeah, you're right. You're right on that. And it's you got to have that self-awareness to be able to categorize.
Yeah. That's why for me, especially now, when somebody's coming at me and it feels like criticism, I really actively try to think like, okay, why are they saying what they're saying? And I actually, like, instead of me thinking it, I actually ask it. Like, so what's making you say like I can't do it, or is it based off something? Because I don't want to get, because I feel like we're both similar. Like as soon as we're on the defense, I don't care what you think, or I don't care what the reason why you say something. F you. I don't want to hear nothing you have to say. But I think, especially like with our dads, right? There is a reason why they're saying what they're saying. Because like we covered earlier, it could be based off experience, or it could be something. It could be your own insecurity. You just never know. But I just like to get an understanding of why you're saying what you're saying to me.
Yeah.
Now, if it is because of like you just being malicious, then yeah, for sure, I'm definitely going to do it because you're just saying it just so you can like discourage me.
Yeah.
And that's definitely going to be a part of my drive to do it now. But if you're saying it and it's for a good intention, but the delivery might be off, then I don't want to make the mistake of like, because of your delivery's off, oh, nah, F you, I'm not. Yeah. But in reality, he could, they could be saying that for a reason because they might have, it could be, I feel like could be something behind it that could benefit to you, and maybe either, I'm not necessarily saying stop doing what you're doing, but it could add more perspective of like what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm very like, as someone's talking to me or criticizing me, I'm like analyzing like, where is this coming from?
Yeah.
And then I ask like the question, try to be inquisitive about it because like I don't want to make that mistake of just shutting you off when you're trying to get something across to me, but because of like it might, it might be very sharp or very blunt, and I might not like it. I could easily just be like, it just could be like want
Yeah.
after
And
I
it's
get checked out.
and I think, I could definitely be better because you mentioned something there, like you're able to come back to the situation at a later time and be like, hey, look, I didn't necessarily mean it that way, whatever.
Right.
I let my shit ride too often.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
And that it creates problems, but in my head, it's like, well, that happened. There's nothing I can do about it now.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Where that's not the best way to handle that situation.
Yeah.
And I've done that in so many situations, personal. But it's like I wouldn't do that in business.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
if a client was upset, like I would try to handle that situation with the utmost.
Right.
But because it's my personal life, and I'm like, man,
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
it'll work its way out. Like,
Oh, is it hard? Is it hard for us to do that because it seems like in our personal life there's no incentive?
yeah, and that could damn. But then the incentive is the fact that you have that person, right?
Yeah, but we not. I think that can be the shortcoming, right? We're
Yeah.
like when it comes to like, of course, business. Like I'm gonna do everything I can because there's money tied to this
Right.
client or there's money tied to what I'm doing, whatever.
Right.
But when it comes
It's
to
the scaling.
right, but I think it's like
It's hard to see
the incentive of like why I need to come back to like
this conversation that we had.
right, like because I think that's the question you ask yourself when if you have a dispute with like your father or your significant other, whoever, what's the incentive here?
Yeah.
Like, am I trying to better my relationship by coming back to what we talked about and just kind of clearing the airway?
Yeah.
I think that's what. Yeah.
And having that ego check.
Yeah, that's really what it is, honestly. At least for me.
Damn. Dude, that's an interesting perspective, my man.
Yeah. Because it's like what? Because I'm pretty sure when you're with a significant other and you're arguing, you probably in my at least in my head, I'm like, what are we talking about?
Yeah,
why
is this even
why is it even
conversation?
important?
Yeah. Yeah, that's 100% right. It's 100% right.
Like with a client, you're like, okay, I'm going back and forth with them
Yeah.
because I'm trying to get their business.
Right. Or trying to handle the situation so that, damn.
Yeah.
Which also is like I've gotten to this point where in my personal life, I'm so used to people just kind of like I'm so okay with people just going away.
Same. And that, but to that point, that's why I do what I do. I try to come back in some type of reconciliation where it's like, if it's a truly we agree to disagree, then that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But at least I came back and tried to figure it out, and then we just got to that point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because to your point that you just said, I'm fine with you disappearing.
Yeah,
I disappear on people.
you do.
And like the scary thing is I won't think anything about it.
No,
It's just like, all right, well,
it just didn't work
this
out.
didn't work out. But then it's
Where the fuck does that come from?
I don't know, man. It's I think it's just us just being self-sufficient, like it's like
Yeah, it's like I got it. I got it.
I got it. I can figure this out. I think it is an ego of at least both of us like okay, well, it wasn't meant to happen, so I can figure this out. I'll figure out eventually.
Yeah.
And we're willing to die on that sword.
Yeah. Damn.
Yeah.
where, damn, what the hell does that mean? Where does that come from?
I think it's
And I think it's gotten worse, bro. For me,
how you feel it's gotten worse for you.
just over the past couple of years, because I know for a fact now that like it doesn't matter what comes, like I'm good.
I'm good regardless.
Because of my past personal experiences,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like,
Yeah,
I'll catch you on the flip side.
yeah.
Which, but genuinely, I could care a lot for that person, but I'm willing to go through the glass, right?
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
willing to step on the glass and like,
I'm dying on my shit. I'm dying on my
but
shit.
and it's so shitty. Like now that I'm speaking it out loud, it's like
It's like damn, yeah, this ain't
this,
the right
yeah,
mentality. At least for personal
Right.
wise, right? Personal wise,
Right.
it's not the right mentality to have. But I think it comes from, of course, experiences. I think it comes from
You had your
Damn.
heart broke?
huh?
You had your heart broke?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
But you weren't like that prior to that, were you?
What you mean? Like prior, like before the
Yeah.
heartbreak.
Yeah.
Oh, I was
You just let it ride?
my first relationship. I was how I am now with V, but then once that once that ended and she broke it off with me, I did go through like a phase of like,
It don't matter.
yeah, it don't matter anyway. I'm about to just lock into myself and do what
Yeah.
I want. So I think that's natural, you know. I think I think it's also more of like just picking yourself up from your bootstraps too.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you go through that phase after a relationship where you just knocking everything you see, and you know, and then also you're just more focused on what you know what you want to do, and I think also is just, but I think also we after like situations like that, I don't think we self reflect enough.
That's a fact.
I think we try to get past that heartbreak by
Jumping into work
jumping into work
or whatever.
or whatever, jumping into the gym. What we try to suppress it. That's
Yeah.
it. We try not to feel it.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna go to the gym, or I'm just gonna knock everything I see.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get so much money, da da da. But all you're doing is like suppressing it. And what tends to happen is like that feeling does come back up,
Yeah.
but it might come back up in like a whole like a situation where it's not even related to that, you know,
Yeah.
like so that's why I think it can be dangerous doing that because it could come up when you're like talking to a client or something like a important client, and like all of a sudden like something with that client triggered that suppressed emotion. Now like you're off your rocker.
Yeah. But I feel like I feel like I regulate it, right?
Yeah.
I feel like I regulate it enough. And like that's probably why jujitsu is so important and stuff like that. But I find myself just being so willing to just let people roll.
Yeah, I don't think I think it's too solid, right? I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, in which I think that's why we're probably both
But
struggling with the thought, like letting just people be people, you know?
right, there is that aspect, right? But it's like how much accountability you taking for the situation.
Ah,
You know what I mean?
That's
Because that gives you an out.
yeah,
It gives you an out of being like, oh, they're gonna roll out anyways.
right,
So what am I doing to go back and have that conversation for?
right. Oh, I knew this was going to happen, so
Yeah.
yeah,
Damn.
yeah,
Going back to experience and perspective.
yeah.
And then also being in the places this person trying to love me, or they trying to trying to play me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's but I think that's why after a heartbreak or or bad business, whatever after a bad situation,
Yeah.
you you can't attack that with tasks. Then you have to attack that with like reflection and some type of self accountability where it's
Yeah.
like, why did this happen? Is there something I could have did better? Is there something they could have did better?
I'm good at that after the fact.
after
Yeah.
after yeah.
Like, and I'll sit there and I'll be like, okay, how could I handle that situation differently? Or how could I, what have I done to facilitate this
And
situation?
you're saying you're good at that after like the situation is what it is.
Yeah. And then, like I said, like you're good at being able to have that conversation on the back end where I'm just like,
Yeah, fuck, yeah.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
I'll know better next time.
Right. So okay, yeah. So you're quick to move on
Yeah.
instead of like trying to come. But it's a tricky situation because there are times where you need to do that.
Yeah.
But then there are also times where you need to go back and reconcile or get some type of club. It's a tricky space.
Yeah. It is a tricky space because at what point are you swallowing your ego or at what point are you bowing down to the situation?
And I think like especially with us, like bowing down to something is a kill to the ego,
Yeah.
which it's like with us, it's like, yeah, no,
Yeah.
I'll die on this sword.
Yeah.
I'm not bowing down to nothing.
Yeah.
But
It's such a crazy place.
no, man, yeah, we kind of went to a mind warp, but I think with us is just changing perspective on that. It's like
Where is my focus?
I think that's the overall question you gotta ask yourself.
Yeah.
Like what's the objective here? What like do I really need to kick this person to the curb, or is it something I'm doing? And it's I'm guilty of like not self-reflecting on that or not
Yeah.
taking no self-accountability on that because it's like, well, F it, they don't want to be here. It is what it is.
Yeah.
But it could be something I'm doing or I'm missing, or maybe it's me not listening.
Right.
It's more me just being in my head, or like you said, just have this your own. You already have this pre-notion that something's going to happen anyway. So
Yeah.
Maybe it is us looking for an out because of that. Like something slight is
Just
can happen.
Self-sabotage.
Like, see, I knew it. I knew it. I knew he was going to do that. That's why I don't mess with blah blah blah. But I don't think he. But I feel like when you have that, man, you can turn yourself off.
Yeah, that 100%.
Like you're not open to stuff no more.
Yeah.
And it could be, and you can ultimately miss a blessing, because of the fact you're just turned off.
Yeah. And you're just sitting there, just being like,
yeah,
this is not gonna go anywhere.
Right.
I'm just shutting down.
I knew this was going to happen anyway.
Yeah.
And a lot of people do that. A lot of people just because of bad experiences, they already know like something can be something very small can trigger it, and they just go down this rabbit hole like, oh yeah, I knew this was going to happen. Yeah. F it. I ain't dealing with it. But it's like just because of a little conflict, we just gonna throw it away.
Mm-hmm.
Now I can see where if we dealt with the conflict and it got to that point where it's like, well,
right, where something just doesn't make sense anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think we can be too quick to throw something away just because like it could be like a little something that was off.
Yeah.
And apparently we planned for it and we knew it was going to happen.
Right.
And so we're so quick to, and it's a defense mechanism.
100%, it's a defense mechanism.
Yeah.
And that's where the self-awareness and the building that perspective of saying like, okay, where is this person coming from?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Because we all, like, again, just how I view the world is not how you view the world,
Right.
right? It may be similar in some aspects, right? And that's why we get along.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that you're gonna see, you know, the note on the board over there, like just because I read it and I'm like, man, I'm grateful for fucking everything. Where
Right.
you're like, man, I'm not grateful for shit.
Right,
Right.
right. We can look at it's just like looking at a quote. Like I
Yeah.
might get something out of it differently than you get something out of
Right.
it, you know. But it's not saying like one's right versus one's wrong. It's just you got different perspective.
Right.
And I think that's
the beauty of life though,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And that's why you're attracted to people, right? Because either A, you have similar points of views, or because that person has a total other point of view, and you're like, man, this person is pretty cool because I never thought about it that way.
Yeah, I mean it's just like this is how me and V are. Like she's very like open minded and like free spirited, and I'm more rigid. And so
Yeah.
I think the reason why the part that I do love about her and gets on my nerves is the fact that she can just like there's no limits to how she dreams or how she thinks.
Yeah.
With me, there's like a practicality there, like, oh, I can do this, but I can't go this far because
Yeah.
I just don't, might not have it, or just
Yeah.
I naturally set a limit for myself where she doesn't set a limit at all.
Yeah.
So that's the part why I do admire about her. And I think it's good to, as long as they're helping you grow, it's good to surround yourself with people that think differently.
Yeah, I think it's important. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
whole point of being able to have that conversation of like, okay, you see it this way, but why do you see it that way, right?
Right.
Because just because I see something and I grew up with it being this way,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that it's correct, right? Because the
Right.
person that I grew up with and like, i.e. parents,
Mhm.
right? Just because your parents saw it this way, they have their own perspective and examples that they built from.
Mhm.
And they pass those down, doesn't mean that I have to see it the same way.
Exactly. I mean, you gotta think of it like this, um, like some people's parents might they call like a small town mentality,
Yeah,
where it's like
echo chamber.
yeah, it's an echo chamber. Like you stayed in this same place, you never ventured out, you never tried to think about exploring, or living somewhere else.
Mhm.
You stayed in one place, so it's like you're you're just used to what's around. I mean, it's a comfort
Yeah.
thing. So when we see somebody that's like they've done this, they've done that, they've been here, they've been there, it's uneasy to us because it's
Yeah.
like, and then they come to us with like different like ideas, and we can easily just be like, oh no, you
Yeah.
can't, I can't do that, or you can't do that. That's not
Yeah.
even feasible to do. But again, it's all about understanding who you are. Like,
Yeah.
if you understand that, okay, I've stayed here for like 20 something years and I've never lived somewhere else, or I never experienced going out the country or whatever, you're gonna have limited thinking. You're already setting yourself up for limited thinking.
Yeah.
So, but a lot of people don't recognize that about themselves, so they're quick to just shoot
The idea down.
shoot good idea down, or hey, maybe you should live here. Well, no, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just not. And a lot of it's just like, well, I think a lot of people just don't have faith, because faith will let you step out and do something different.
Yeah.
You know, you just you're cool being in your box, being
Yeah.
in your shell.
Because it's comfortable.
It's comfortable. It's
Yeah.
I know this shell. I know this box. I know this. I know every corner in this box.
But it's such a deadly place to be.
Yeah, it's a place of complacency, for
Yeah.
sure.
And that's what comfort creates complacency.
Mm-hmm. It's just like how that's kind of what we go through now, especially like me. When you work for a company, you see people that's been there for like 30 years or 40 years. Like there's one guy who just retired. He was there for like 45 years, and it's just like, it's like you don't know if that's like an honorable thing or you're just like, damn,
You never thought
thought
about it?
about going somewhere else or
Right.
you know. But it all depends on their situation and what they got going on. But I do think experiencing new things and just having different thoughts just makes you more of a balanced person.
Yeah, 100%.
Because you don't want to be too far left, too far right. It's going to be. I feel like it's going to be a tug, but you always want to be kind of in that middle where you don't want to. You just don't want to be closed minded. That's the dangerous part.
Yeah, I agree with that. So how do these apply?
I say mind. Overall, I think it's just. And I've said this, all I feel like in every episode, but I think it's just really self-reflecting and just like I think it's just challenge. Oh, I think for all three, and I'll do more of a deep dive on each, mind, body, and spirit. But I think for all three, if you just want a basis, it's just challenging yourself.
Yeah,
Like just challenge like your mind, right? Challenge yourself by uh exploring new places or just talking to different types of people and reading books and I think that's something you can do to help your mind is just expose yourself to something different
yeah,
that's going to force you to think a little bit further outside the box than you already are.
yeah,
And I think body wise it's again same concept, challenge yourself like you know okay, you go to the gym already, but now wake up early and go to the gym.
yeah,
Or okay, instead of doing the same exercises, switch it up.
yeah.
Because it's your body's funny like that, where it's like, if I do 10 push-ups every day, eventually 10 push-ups is going to be
Not
nothing.
anything, yeah.
And then eventually, like, you'll see your gains go here, and eventually you're really just starting, I wouldn't say go down, but you'll just start to plateau because
Right.
it's like your body's used to that. So, body wise, you gotta challenge yourself, whether it's, you know, like for me, like I was always in the gym, but now with jujitsu, like that's a whole different, it's not necessarily about brute strength, it's really
Yeah,
about just like really thinking about it's chest.
yeah.
It's
It's
just
both.
yeah.
It's both.
It's both. So challenge yourself body wise by trying new things. And spiritual wise, I think it's just hmm, I think the way to challenge your spirit is let me think about this. Challenging your spirit is I think it's just overall I think it's just overall holding yourself accountable. And what I mean is like for example, like if like someone tells you you're an alcoholic and you're like, no, I'm not alcoholic.
Yeah,
Yeah, I like to drink, but I think the part that's just really just reflecting and be like, well, damn, I am at the bar 24/7, or I do drink a case of, I can drink a 24 case by myself. Like, just start thinking
yeah,
about things that are like, wow, so am I alcoholic? Like, is this really, is this really damaging? Like, is this really damaging me or is this harming me? Like, I think spiritualized is just self reflecting on ways you can be better,
yeah,
uh, giving yourself accountability on areas you struggle in, and ultimately just putting that into action.
yeah,
I think the spiritual aspect of it is just being self aware, being self aware, being self aware of where you're at, what you're trying to do, are the things that I can clean up, whether it's like hey, I'm trying to live a healthier lifestyle. It's something basic.
Yeah.
Well, what does that look like? Well, gotta stop smoking. Can't, gotta chill out on the drinking. Gotta go to bed earlier. Gotta, and understand the sacrifices that's going to get you to where you're trying to get to. So I think that's how overall for all three, challenge yourself.
Yeah.
That's the best way. What about yourself?
For the mind would be trying to gain perspective from another source, right? So, and just for like the easiest example, right now, like politics is heavy, right? Taking the time to be able to say, okay, look, this is one example of things that are happening. Actually being able to put yourself on the other side of it and gain perspective. So
Right.
What's something that's super polar right now? It didn't have to be politics, just something super polar.
Somebody with an alternative lifestyle.
Okay. So being able to gain the perspective of that dang,
That's
you really did it there.
That's
Okay, all right. So with that, right? Being able to actually put your mind to it and be like, okay, well, I'm gonna read a book or I'm gonna listen to a podcast about this. I'm going to get perspective from the other point of view, right? Forcibly. Being able to sit there and not take the idea of like, oh, this is dumb, right? Oh, you're an idiot. But being able to take the perspective of like, clean slate. I don't know anything about this. This is research based of understanding, right?
Yeah.
The same concept in the art of war. What do you do with your opponent? Right? You learn your opponent. You gain the perspective from their point of view, right? And so I think that's something. I think that's something that you can do with your mind is be able to gain the perspective. Ask yourself the questions that need to be asked, like outside of where you're at.
Yeah, and is you don't, and let me just say, you don't have to agree with it.
No,
you don't have to agree with it, but just I think, but don't be hateful.
right.
I think that's where sometimes a disagreement can have that type of vibe too, where it's just like, well, I disagree with you and I don't like you, or I hate your what you just said because I hate what you overall represent.
Yeah.
So you can disagree.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with disagreeing with with somebody living an alternative lifestyle, whatever.
Yeah.
But
have you given yourself the opportunity to understand it?
Right.
Right. Which I'm not always the best at.
I'm not
right.
Either.
But if we're talking about mind, that's how you grow your mind. Being, listening. That's the luxury of podcasts nowadays, dude.
Oh, there's so many subjects.
Right.
Yeah.
And we get so caught up in the things that we like and we feel like they're going to better us or whatever people like, dive into.
Right.
But you can also take that moment to say like, you know what, today I'm gonna try and gain some perspective on this idea or this ideology or this person, right? There's people have what is it, autobiographies? All so many autobiographies out there that people are still alive. Is it autobiography?
Yeah.
What is
Will.
autobiography is like when they're still alive, right? Or is it a biography?
I think it's biography. I don't know. I thought autobiography were related to like a movie or that. No.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
Either way, being able to get a perspective on that person that you wouldn't have because all you're doing is listening to the news.
Right.
You get what I'm saying?
Right.
So there's that idea. The mind, body wise, dude, being able to put yourself in challenging situations, cold plunges, that whole idea of like, dude, I don't want to do this, that moment you need to do it. Right?
Yeah.
I went to go get a massage last weekend, and it's kind of like a health
Thing you're trying
yeah.
to do. Yeah.
No, it's a I go probably like I'm not the best at it, right?
Yeah,
Taking
me
care of
neither.
myself in that sense, but
Same.
whatever. It's kind of like a spa, right? You go there, they got the sauna, they got the cold plunge, and then you get a massage, right?
Nice.
And I was one of my guys that's at the gym owns it, and I texted him. I was like, "Hey man, it's about time for me to get in there. I'm pretty sore." And he was like, "All right, so we'll set you up with the cold plunge, the sauna, and then the massage." And I was like, "I don't really want to do the cold plunge." Like my mind was like, I was already in that mindset of like, nah, I'm not doing that.
Right. Because
Like,
I've done the spa, I've
yeah,
done the sauna, but
I don't want to get cold,
right.
right? And I was like, oh, I'm being a bitch.
It's uncomfortable.
Yeah, so I was like, all right, I got to do it. So I was like, put me down for the cold plunge, right?
Mhm.
So those are the things where it's like you've got to move forward and towards the uncomfortableness, like you were saying, like if the moment that you feel like, man, I really don't want to do that, but you genuinely know, like that inner being knows, like the spirit side of your body, knows, like, yeah, you should probably do that.
Yeah.
And so that is also good for the body.
Mm-hmm.
Um, again, going back to the spirit, same concept. You genuinely know, right? Emotionally, you may have some blockage on that, right?
Right.
Having those emotional conversations, for instance.
Yeah.
But in your spirit, you're like,
You know.
you don't need to go and ask somebody on some perspective on this.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
Yeah.
And if you would just listen to yourself, right?
Trust yourself.
And trust your spirit and know where you're at. Like, have some faith in the fact of like, you know what? I know what the answer is on this. I just the reason like I think I genuinely think that majority of people know if it's a hell yes or a hell no.
Yeah. You know, honestly, you know, after you have thought about it
Yeah.
a couple times.
Like and going back to the flipping of the quarter, right? You flip the quarter if you're looking to buy a cup or you know uh whatever you're trying to buy two different cups
Mm-hmm.
and you're like, all right, whichever one this lands on, I'm buying that cup, right? Heads this, tails this. You flip the coin, you know where you're hoping that it falls. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's the hell no, hell yes concept. Like I'm like that's spoken inside.
Yeah.
You get what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think if you can take that around people and you can take it around investments, you can take it around whatever you're trying to do.
You apply
Right, you can apply it in so many aspects.
Yeah.
If you just start listening to yourself in that sense, which is hard to do sometimes because we are emotional human beings.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're emotional beings. So trying to listen to the spirit a little bit more.
Yeah, I think it requires us to slow down too, though. You know.
Yeah, there is a big part of that.
Because I know for us, we kind of,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
you're trying to keep that thing pushing.
Once we rolling, we rolling. You
Yeah,
know.
I had a conversation today, with one of my good buddies from jujitsu, and we have a very similar mentality. He's very similar to us, and he's like, so how's everything been on your end? Because like obviously, I haven't been there too often just because of the things.
Yeah.
And he's like, so how's everything been? You know, and I'm like, oh man, everything's good. He's like, how's everything else? And I was like, you mean this?
Yeah.
I was like, man, you know, I'm just pushing the rock up the hill.
Yeah.
You know? And because he understands that concept, right? But he's a dad, he's a husband, like he's got that lock, right? And he's got like 5 years on me.
Yeah.
And he goes, yeah, I get that. But he was like, so how's this person? And I was like, "Ah, man, everything's good. You know, we're seeing each other when we can." Da, da. And he's like, "When you can." And
Yeah.
I was like, "Yeah, bro." Like,
He dagged you.
yeah. I was like, "Yeah, man, I'm, you know, I'm growing the business." Da, da. He's like, "That's great. What happens if you die tomorrow? You gonna wish you grew that business even bigger, or where it's at right now, you gonna be happy with it?" And I was like,
he got happy.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I would still, I would wish that I would have done it more.
Mhm,
Like, I want this place to be self-sufficient, and I want the guys to be self-sufficient with it.
mhm.
And he's like, "I hear you, but don't you think you should be uh wanting to make time for those around you?" And he was like, "You shouldn't just be hanging out with people when you can. You shouldn't just be, seeing people when you can." He's like, "You should make an effort to make those things happen." And I'm like, "Yeah, you're right." But and he was like, "You may think that that will slow down." He's like, from our conversations, you seem like you want kids at some point. You want the whole concept, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, man, at some point." He's like, "I'm gonna tell you this right now because I know from experience it doesn't stop. You pushing the rock up the hill doesn't stop until you miss something big."
Mm.
And I'm like, "Damn."
Yeah, that's
He's like, "That rock and that hill don't stop." He's like, it you may feel like you get to a certain point, you're gonna be good. That mentality doesn't give up. And you're not gonna give up that mentality. And I'm like, "Nah, dude, that's not where I'm at.
mm-hmm.
That's not me." Like, I'll know when I have the
I
opportunity.
need to chill, yeah.
He's like, "If you're a billionaire and you're you're having a heart attack or whatever, and only a couple people show up." And he's like, "How you gonna feel about that?" And I was like, "Man, like all of these points are valid. Like everything you're saying is valid, but also like the rock must go up the hill." And he's like, "Look, I understand, but just have the perspective of being able." And this was another one of those moments where I was like, he's like, "Have the perspective of being able to understand that there are people around you that want to spend time with you,
Yeah.
and you can do both things."
Yeah.
And I was like, "This valid point. I don't know why I needed to hear that. I don't know why this happened in this
Well,
current
hey
moment."
man, I think
But
I think things are said and people come into your life, whether it's for a moment or a season or forever.
Yeah.
There's a reason. I think there's a reason why he told you that.
yeah,
You know, and it sounds like real receptive to it. But just from what I'm hearing, you're also saying like, I hear you, but yeah, I gotta get this damn rock
yeah,
up this hill. But it's a valid point. I think overall what he's saying, and honestly, just from hearing you, it felt like he was talking to me too. It's just like,
yeah,
what's the point of getting the rock up the hill if you look down and you see bodies, and those bodies can be like
yeah. Just the casualties of
just the
pushing.
casualties of pushing, and
Yeah.
those casualties can be, you know, you forego friendships, or you forego relationships,
Yeah.
or you didn't spend enough time with your parents and now they're gone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then, so it's just like, yeah, you got what you wanted, but damn, a lot of bodies,
Yeah.
a lot of dead folks here.
Yeah.
Now I'm by myself
Yeah.
with this accomplishment.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a valid point.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a lot of perspective, but that's the whole idea of like the mind, body, spirit concept, right? Being able to have those apply, but hell yes or hell no in your body, right?
Yeah.
There, very little is it. You're trying to get the confirmation bias when you ask somebody something.
Yeah, it's like validation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
A lot of times.
hey, what do you think?
Yeah. And they're like, "Well, here's a different perspective." And you're like, "Nope, that ain't it." That's not what I was looking for.
Yeah.
I was looking for you to tell me what I want to do, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or whatever. But then internally, you know. And so I think that's kind of where I'm at the current moment is trying to apply that across the board more and more.
Right.
So
Right.
I think we did it, man.
Beautiful, man. Share, like, subscribe to the Three Pillars of Man. Like we always say at the end of each episode, this is a very grassroots effort. We're not investing too much into, into the, with the whole production team and all that. It's just two friends just trying to figure out how to continue to improve within the mind, body, and spirit. Any closing remarks, my brother?
Keep pushing.
Keep pushing. See you later.